The preceding program was brought to you in part by Welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm Pete Mezzetti. My guest this evening is State Representative Nick Menapace. Hello, sir.
Good to see you, Pete.
How are you, buddy?
I'm very good.
Long time no see. It's been, what, been about a year?
It has been, yeah.
It has been.
Yeah.
What's new?
Well, I won my race for state representative.
I know you did. I know you did.
And I had the closest race in the state, so 99 votes. That was definitely a fun one to count. But I always like 99 votes because if I just said 100, I feel like everyone would think I was just making up a number.
Exactly.
99's perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your district and what areas you represent.
Yeah, I represent the 37th district. That's East Lyme, and then it's part of Salem and Montville.
Okay.
It's been great, about, like I said, the vast majority of the people who live in it live in East Lyme, and I live in East Lyme, so
Right.
it makes sense. But, it's interesting because, like I said, Salem's a district, a town that has a lot of connection to East Lyme. Most of the kids who go to school there, they go up to East Lyme High. Mm-hmm. And then Montville's another one of the towns where, they're split multiple ways. But I really love the community. I love being able to go around to all these places and talk to people. And I've, really loved for this last year now being able to serve them as their state representative.
And what committees are you on?
I'm on education, government administration and elections, which is GAE.
Okay.
And I'm on the finance committee as well.
And as far as, can you tell us a little bit about each committee and what they do?
Yeah, absolutely. So GAE is an interesting one. There's a one there where they tend to do a lot of the work that we have directly with elections. Mm-hmm. Things like implementing, we're going to have to implement this year, no excuse absentee ballots. There's like early voting.
Okay.
Anything that has to do with the state constitution has to come through GAE, but then a lot of it is also kind of administrative stuff. And we also think there's also some of the kind of fun stuff that you have, like when they declare something to be I think we declared New Britain to be the hot dog capital of the state last year. When you have those types of bills, they tend to come through GAE as well. So it can kind of vary. Like I said, we'll have these very serious things that we're talking about, very important, and then it's like, yep, we have a package here about what's going to be the hot dog capital of the state and things like that. And I really enjoy it though. But education's an interesting one. As a teacher, it's a big committee, a lot of people on it. And this last year, we were really, really focused on special education. So they redid the way we were funding special education in the state to make it a more regional approach and to kind of give some more of the money toward the district so that they can kind of try and fund a lot of their own special ed programs. It's something, I was able to talk about that a lot because as a teacher, I'm very well know firsthand that a lot of the challenges that these districts end up running into where if someone changes schools, that can wreck an entire town's school budget just because of the requirements that they might have. And by trying to take these away from essentially sending these to some out of district places, they're able to keep them in the town and they're able to kind of lower some of these costs that we have. And then finally, finance. Finance is everything that related to how the state generates money.
Yes.
And that's a controversial one at times, but it
That's got to be fun.
I will be honest, it is probably like one of the most, because it is very interesting because it is a big committee, but I love the way they run it. And a lot of this is just kind of the, trying to hear all the different perspectives. And a lot of this, it's not just about taxes. A lot of it's about the perspective of like, we had a big one that I couldn't say I knew a lot about cars and about like luxury cars at the car tax. And like, well, with inflation, that's, so many of the cars run up against that luxury tax threshold. Do we need to lower it? And that was a really interesting conversation. We talk about lots and lots of different ways that we can end up trying to make the state a little bit better, what we can try and do to adjust it. We are a little bit limited by what we call the fiscal guardrails right now, but even that's an interesting discussion that we have.
Right. Now, as far as the car tax goes, what do you think's going to be done with it?
Well, I mean, what we did pretty simply for this was essentially put a little bit more into the municipalities' hands. So they're able to kind of make the decisions on what they're going to do. And that is ultimately where it is. It's a bit odd in a lot of ways for me, because I'm like, well, why is the state setting up what you're going to do? It's ultimately going to be the municipality's decision for it. But I mean, that was kind of what we ended up doing this year, is that we said, yeah, the municipality gets to make a lot more decisions about what they are going to do with their own car taxes.
Right.
And I mean, honestly, it's something that, we end up talking a lot about for these, because people will tell me that they're upset about property taxes. And I'm like, I get it. Right. I have a lot of thoughts about property taxes. I don't think they're a great way to fund education. I also have to tell people, it's like, that is something that the town set up, though.
Right.
So the state doesn't actually set anything to do with that. But they are still something that people come to, because it is a statewide issue when people are talking about, issues of rising, I guess I would say, income inequality, but also rising issues of, people don't feel like their money they make is able to go as far anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And looking forward to this year's session in 2026, what are we looking at?
Oh, I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff. I think there's a lot of stuff we're going to do in education that's very interesting. I think that we're going to be talking a little bit more about, there were a lot of questions that came up about homeschooling, and I think it'd be interesting to see what ultimately does happen for that. Because I can tell you that we had kind of a very abbreviated session based on some of the things that have happened with students who have been like homeschooled, and then the kind of the lack of oversight that comes in through like things like DCF. And I know as a teacher that is an issue, because we really don't have a lot of answers for what we can do better about this. And I think that's really the hope, that we can come into this session and we can get those, so we can try and make a decision that's going to help the kids in our state. But the other big part of that is probably going to be cell phones. I think cell phones are going to be one of the biggest things that education talks about this year.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of appetite from schools, from parents, from very bipartisan appetite in the legislature to do something about cell phones, because right now we have essentially asked towns to come up with a policy. And I think now the governor really wants to push in that he wants to have it be that we're going to basically get cell phones out of, especially for younger students, but out of the schools, because it has been this big problem of the district. I can tell you, especially for older kids, it is a distraction for so many of them, because it's this thing they're glued to. But it's also tough for a lot of the parents, because they're coming in and they feel like they have to have constant contact with your student. And I do understand to some extent, but one of the ones I always had is, I'm like, guys, there's so many ways to get in touch with people. This cell phone is hurting their ability to learn. But like I said, I'm interested in seeing what the public ends up saying, what we end up having. But I've heard a lot of people telling me that they really want to see that the cell phones get removed from schools. Right. And then for GA, I was actually talking to one of your crew members beforehand, is that we have to this year make a decision, because in 2024 the state referendum passed that we're going to have to change the state constitution in order to allow for no excuse absentee ballots. I was really hoping we'd get that finished last year, but we didn't. So we're gonna have to pass this year so that people have that option to be able to use no excuse absentee ballots, which is pretty much what it sounds like, that you don't have to give a reason. You can just say, I want an absentee ballot, and I can get one. And then for finance, I'm interested to see what we're gonna end up doing. I think there's a lot of discussion that we had, like I said, about the fiscal guardrails and about what we can do to kind of do a better job of kind of fixing the way income inequality works in this state. I think it's been a huge problem, and I think a lot of what we currently have in mind ends up hurting a lot of regular people. And I think we need to do something about that. But in order to do it, we have to actually adjust the way we draw in money, because with the way the fiscal guardrails, which I know a lot of people maybe like, what is that, or how does that work? But basically what it does is it limits how the state can take in money. So even if something was passed and the state took in $1 million new from this one, if it's not under the system, you can't actually use it. And I find that frustrating. So how we end up getting a lot of these kind of what people think of as like these ticky-tacky like tax things that be able to pass. And it was one that I had a real conundrum on, because there was a bill this last year about doing a soda tax in order to pay for universal school meals. And I am a huge supporter of universal school meals, but I can tell you that the bill really did, in the end, I suppose, kind of bug me, because I was torn, because I don't like the idea of putting in this tax on soda for people. I'm like, why are we doing that? Why don't we take this out of the budget? And the end result is it's because we wouldn't have been able to do that under the fiscal guardrails.
Exactly.
And it's very frustrating, but it's definitely something that I have to be a little bit more patient for myself to have this be something that oftentimes it is a process to be able to get these things done.
Right.
And yeah.
Now, as far as the aspect of cell phones in schools, you being an educator,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I mean, like I said, it is definitely, like in my class, I work with a lot of older students because I work in like an alternate ed, adult education space, and we end up having them for what we're doing, and that's a lot of it because I work with a lot of ESL students, so we use a lot of translation. That's actually part of the grant that I operate under is like,
Oh, really?
we need to use AI to help translation and things like that, and it's very interesting.
Right.
But I would say that even in that space, even in that adult ed and the alternative ed space, we're often finding that students are distracted by their cell phones.
Right.
Now that is kind of the nature of them, that when you have smartphones, they're a very difficult thing to, they're a very distracting item. And I'd really like to be able to see us have something clear aspects, because I think we have a lot of data that says that, yeah, this is a problem and it's hurting the way our students learn.
Right.
But and to get into that second part of it, the other part that I think that we are going to talk about, I don't know if it's going to really come through any of the committees I'm on, is AI.
Yeah.
Because this has been a huge talking point. And right now, the thing that we're really dealing with is that the federal government tried to pass this in Congress, and then that didn't pass, where they were going to try and restrict and prevent any state from making any kind of restriction on AI in any way. And that was really concerning because one of the bills that we had was to try and prevent things like deepfakes, and was to be able to try and prevent basically the use of AI to manipulate images and campaign material.
Right.
And the question is like, well, that would be, according to this, if they had passed that law, that would have been under there, that we couldn't do that. Right. And I don't think it's healthy for anyone to be able to allow for manipulated images like that to go out to people. We're seeing that this is going to increasingly be a problem. And unfortunately, like I said, there was an executive order that came through that was going to say that, oh, yep, you can't make any type of restriction on AI. That's not viewed as binding by the state whatsoever, because it is not how we pass laws in this country.
Right.
But I think it's going to be interesting because it's not just about AI, it's about everything. It's about energy. It's about data centers, which are a big topic in this part of the state, anywhere in the country. But especially the energy thing, I think that that's going to be the thing that everyone's really talking about, because these new data centers use up so much more energy than just what we're used to. And with what's happening at the federal government, where they're trying to shut down certain types of power, and we saw that with Revolution Wind, that's going to make everyone's energy prices go up. And at a time when we're trying to do what we can to lower energy prices, which is difficult because we don't have a public utility. I mean,
Right.
I suppose the people who are fortunate enough to have that one in their town, that's good. But in most of these, we're using Eversource or UI, and those are going to have increasing energy demands because of AI. The nuclear plant over in Millstone and Waterford, they want to have a data center that goes in there that would use up something like 15 to 25% of the power that nuclear plant generates. Well, if we don't offset that by having other types of energy as well, then you're going to see everyone's prices go up. And that's what I think was really upsetting for me about something like Revolution Wind, which is a nearly completed project, but for whatever reason, the federal government is dead set against wind energy, and their reasoning for it has consistently changed, and it quite frankly doesn't make sense. It's a nearly completed project, and that we're accounting for that energy already when they do out these future forecasts of what they're going to end up having. And if we're getting rid of, I think it's like 750. I'm not going to use the right whatever it is. It's not like megawatts, but it's this huge amount of energy that was going to be used. That if we don't have that anymore, that's going to make your energy bills go up,
Right.
and nobody wants that.
No. Would you mind sticking around for another segment?
Sure.
All right, we'll be right back.
You matter.
You matter.
You matter.
And your words matter too.
Your words matter.
What you say in the hallways at school or in the student section at a game matters.
Words can be hurtful.
Words can be offensive.
Words can leave scars.
Words can also inspire.
Support and uplift.
You and your words.
Are they both important?
As a matter of fact, yes. Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too
Sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew a girl so smart, so responsible, she must be a keeper.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm Pete Mezzetti, sitting here with State Representative Nick Menapace. Welcome back, sir.
Hey.
Thanks. All right, so in the first segment, we talked about everything going on in the state legislature. Let's open up this segment talking about your thoughts on early voting and how you think it went.
Yeah, so that was something we did a lot with for this last session for GAE, because like I said, early voting is a frequent topic, and I can tell you that I'm definitely one who I want to know more about, like, where people come from, because I'm hearing it from a lot of different places, especially smaller towns. I represent, like I said, East Lyme and Salem, and in Salem, they had early voting for the 14 days that they're prescribed for the municipal elections, but it's pretty much just the registrar and their deputy. And they were talking to me about the frustrations that this is a job that they weren't expecting, especially in a small town like Salem, which you're not paid much for this, and I don't think the deputies are paid at all, that you are essentially having to work so much more than what is normally expected for you in a town of that size. And they wanted to be able to have the option of going down in the number of days that they did for early voting. And the same thing comes up for just the fact that it's municipal elections. You know, we're looking at, most towns are still less than 50% turnout. And that's considered pretty good for local elections. And the fact is that we did still have a lot of people who came out and used early voting. And I think that's where some people are like, they're not sure about it, because I think the state, we need to be doing a better job at funding this, because we're essentially giving nothing to the towns to be able to deal with this expense and just asking them to eat it, which I'm not a fan of whatsoever.
No.
And at the same time, though, like I said, we are going to be having no excuse absentee ballots, and I'm not sure what we're going to end up deciding to do. Some people have proposed that we should reduce down, or give the option to reduce down the number of days that you have. Some people don't want to have the early voting at all, although that's something, though, that the state citizens passed that as something that they want to have in this state, is early voting, and it's clear they also want no excuse absentee balloting. So we will have to see. I think it's going to be a really good point of discussion. I know that Secretary of State Stephanie Thomas is going to be talking about that with us a lot this year. She and I have talked a little bit about the way that we just process absentee ballots, and if we're going to be able to do those different, because right now you can't count any absentee ballots until the first day, and that's not something that, or the day, election day, but that's not something that every state does. So some people said, look, well, maybe we should consider that. I don't know what the right answer is, but I definitely want to discuss it with my colleagues and see what we come up with.
And from what I understand, most of the towns, if not all of the towns, they got new voting machines.
Yes, they did.
They got new tabulators.
Yes, they're very excited about it. My friend is one of the registrars of voters, and they were telling me when I came in for early voting, as I worked the polls on one of the days, is that they were telling me all about the new tabulators and how it was so much easier to use, and even just like they have to print out the results and give them to people, and they were like, these were so much easier to decipher than the previous ones, because the previous ones would use this huge list. And it was very difficult to do, but the new ones, it's pretty much just boom, this is what everything we've got, and that's how it was able to work. So they were very happy about them. They actually demonstrated for us at the legislature. They had us come through the Secretary of the State's office, and we got to see what how the new tabulators worked and everything.
Cool.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. But there's little things we're going to try and change too. Right now, at least with early voting, they have to put all of the things into the envelopes. And the hope has been that they can do something so that we don't have to have that annoying process. We didn't have any big issues this year, but I don't know if you remember in 24, they had in Stonington, they had to have everybody come back because they hadn't been having them signing the forms, and little things like that. It's like, that's just so much extra work. And that was one of the things that was nice of when I sat in and I was working the polls with them, is they showed me the process that they have to do to be able to count these ballots properly. And it was just a lot of work that seems like, gosh, it feels like we could just remove this little part of it and it would be so much easier for you guys. So that was a really great thing for me. I thought being able to go in there and work the polls for the East Lyme local elections was really useful for me because, like I said, it's a lot of work to ask the registrars and their deputies to do.
And from what I understand, because of the elections, some towns ran out of ballots.
Yes, they did.
Nice.
Now, not my towns. They were very excited, but some towns did because they had such a high turnout. And I mean, we're looking at a lot of these places. You have around 1/3 of the town will come out and vote. That's always skewed because some towns have a lot of people. Like you have a town like Lyme and they have very high turnout, but then you have some other places that have a much lower turnout. But as you said, some of these ones ran out of ballots, and I can tell you that our registrars were worried the day of the election. They were really worried they were very worried about running out of ballots.
Right. And as far as I early voted.
Yeah.
When
me too.
Yeah, and you took the ballot, filled everything out, signed the envelope, and then you put it in the box, and then I believe they got put through the machine on election.
Yep, exactly how it worked.
And people were like, because I heard somebody say this when I was voting, they were like, "How do I know my vote's going to be counted?" I'm like, the moderator was like, because what you're going to do is we're going to get everybody who voted. Your envelopes are going to go into a secured locked location, and then they're going to come in on election day and just run them all through the machine.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. Like I said, that's what the registrars were showing me, and like they had me be part of that process where we're just sitting in there and they're having it. Well, I wasn't on election day, so I was there when they were getting the actual parts in there, and they have to double and triple verify everybody who comes through to make sure, because they're doing it all the early part, and then on the day of, they're also verifying it too. And it ends up being a little bit of, like I said, a process, and that's something that they're really hoping they can actually use these tabulators to make that a little bit easier for the registrars, because it's a lot to be able to keep track of, and it's a lot to end up doing, and there is a lot of work that's put in there to make sure that there is no possible way for anyone to interfere with these things. They have to have 2 people in the room at all times for these, and the same thing for any of these when you're counting the absentee ballots. There's like moderators, there's double checkers, there's all these people there to make sure that there is no issue whatsoever. And I could say that that's one of the frustrations I run into, is that I've seen the amount of work that these guys are putting in, Democrats and Republicans putting in, to make sure that this election is going off without a hitch. And then for people to come in there and just baselessly throw stuff out at them, it really frustrates me.
It's crazy.
Because any one of these people should sit in there and see the amount of work that they're doing to make sure everything's running smoothly.
Just come in, sit behind somebody, and just watch what they do all day.
Yeah.
And then you'll get an idea of what's going on.
Exactly.
Because it's
they're open. They'll hire people to be able to come in and work the polls.
Oh, trust me. A couple of years ago, I actually worked my local polling place, and it was a presidential.
Yeah.
And all I did was stood in the middle of the room. Please have your identification out and ready when you go up to your table to register.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please have it. And that was 14 hours of saying that. It's like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that hard.
Yeah, it's a tremendous work that these guys do, and either these men and women who do it are like, they're really putting themselves out there for it, and I think it's amazing work that they do. And if anything, I really hope that when we get out for this new process for early voting and absentee ballots, that we get some of their perspectives on this thing, people who've actually worked the polls, because they're the ones having to deal with all these things that we actually pass. And that's one of the reasons I was happy to go and work the polls. The Secretary of State is like, I want some of you legislators to go out there and see what it is that they're dealing with.
Right. And I'm sure there were, the day of the election, there were people there checking off, if you early voted, you can't vote again.
Absolutely.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. That was going through every single part of it to make sure there was no issues whatsoever.
And I'm sure the Secretary of State's happy the way everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she was going through for me because there were a couple places that had a recount. I don't know if you know, but in Salem, one of my towns, they had a recount, and because the person who won for the top spot, Sue Spank, she won by 2 votes. So they had to go through and like redo all of it, now the process. And it's just like, geez, that's so much
time
work.
consuming.
Yeah, but it's why it's the importance of coming out to vote.
Exactly. And did she win?
Oh, she did. Yeah,
Okay.
she ended up winning that one. She's the first woman to be first selectman in Salem, and like I said, it's a very tight margin there of 2 votes.
Wow.
I thought mine was tight at 99, but 2 is.
I know. Yeah.
There was a guy a couple years ago. He won in Chris Poulos. He won over his state rep race by one vote. Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk
And then
about-
I
talk
did
about-
ask for that one because we even had another one where there was a tie. And when there's a tie, it's a whole new election. You don't get to do it again. But like some of these places, it's like you draw straws or whatever it is, but not in Connecticut. Totally new election. Yeah.
Really? You
Oh,
have to do the whole
it's how
process all over
it's how we
again.
do it even for this year. Unfortunately, with Kevin Ryan passing away, there's
That's
going to be
right.
a special election on January 13th.
Okay.
And it's very much in state statute that there has to be a new election within, I think it's within 50 days.
I think so. Something
And
like that.
that has to be, because there was some talk about that should we have done it? Because it was right before the holidays, it's right at this point, and it was very unexpected, but no, state statute was very clear. And that's why they're going to have the new election on, the election for the new seat on January 13th.
I've never met Kevin Ryan, but he seemed like a really nice guy.
He was a very nice man. He'd been, serving in the legislature for over 30 years, and his death was very unexpected.
Yeah, I saw it in the paper because a dear friend of mine is former Speaker Jim Amon.
Yeah.
And Jim posted something. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
He's like, it's pretty amazing. And really quick, because we got a little bit more time left, let's talk about the housing bill.
Yeah. All right, this is pretty simple. I mean, it's one of these ones that I feel like there's a lot of people with a lot of questions, which I think is great.
Right.
The thing that I always get a little frustrated with for myself is I put myself out there as much as I can to make sure it's like, hey, I want to answer your questions. Anything you've got about the housing bill, I'd love to hear it.
Right.
And I've had, instead, some of these people just ranting about what they think it does. And then I'm like, I really do want to just answer what this is actually going to do. And by and large, almost everything that it's doing is it's trying to make it a little bit easier to be able to get through the process of actually building housing, trying to clear out some of this red tape, which is very similar to what some of the bills that were passed in other states. Idaho, Pennsylvania, any one of these places that were able to get these bills passed. And we'll try, because this is a big problem. It's not just a problem in the Northeast, but I can tell you in the Northeast, I talked to a lot of other legislators, and they're all agreeing this is a big issue, that housing costs are getting much, much higher. We're not having enough housing stock for the population to continue to grow or even really stay stagnant. So we're seeing the populations are declining. And when that's happening, it's going to be a problem for everyone in the state, because it's not just the municipalities that are going to suffer. It's going to be that tax base is going to go down, and then it's going to make, on the other side of it, that your property taxes are going to go up, because if there's fewer people to pay, then it means there's going to end up having to be more and more asked of the people who currently live there. But the biggest part of the bill, like I said, is trying to make towns understand the education part of this.
Right.
They wanted to be clear about what's going to benefit for these towns, and we want to make sure that they know where they can get these grants to help them build housing, what we want to be able to get them. We're trying to see if we can make sure we're having housing being built near existing infrastructure.
Okay.
Nobody wants to be able to go out there and have it be that you're clear cutting a forest to be able to build housing. We would like to keep that land, but in order to do that, we have to do things like infill. And if we're going to infill, it means that we're going to do different kinds of housing. And oftentimes, that types of housing, that is more beneficial financially for a town than just going out there and building these large, acre lots with single houses, because that's all a lot of infrastructure that the town needs to build in order to pay for it. And so what we end up having now, I think, is trying to sort through the information and the misinformation. I know it's something that I've very much tried to put myself out there and talk to people about what we're having, because housing is something that's really important to me. It's actually one of the ways I got involved pretty early was talking about an accessory dwelling bill that they had come out in 2018. And what had happened then was pretty simply that there had been a bill that said you could opt into this, but a lot of these towns freaked out. And the end result is I was trying to figure out at the time, why are you guys so afraid of this? This is the allowance of someone to build something on their own property. Right. And for whatever reason, it was treated as this awful thing that would happen. Now, it was funny to see it this year, though, because then a lot of our Republican colleagues who were there in 2018 and saying how terrible it would be to allow accessory dwelling units are now saying, we need to build more of these things. We need to have more of them. And I was glad to hear it, but I think that's going to be the same conversation we have about a lot of the stuff in this bill, is that it's going to be demonized. We're going to talk about, oh my gosh, It's not taking away any zoning rights it has. All it's asking for towns is to use the information that are given to come up with an actual plan for making housing that works for the town. Everybody gets to set their own expectations and what they want to do.
Exactly.
I don't know how we're very much having the carrot approach of like, we want you to do this and here are some incentives to be able to do it. And it's not the way it's supposed to run.
No. State Representative Nick Menapace, thanks for some time. We'll
Thanks
see
so
you
much,
soon.
Pete.
Thanks,
Yeah.
buddy.
Thanks.
On behalf of Nick Menapace, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks, good night. We'll see you next time. The preceding program was brought to you in part by